So I saw Nope and it was above average. We're going to go with above average. It was above average. It wasn't that good, but it's not as bad or as terrible as some people are saying. This one is, I want to say, weird. It's trying to be deep, but it's fairly empty. So even without getting too much into the plot details, there's really not much here. Essentially, this is, yes, kind of a horror film, but mainly it's a science fiction film. Okay, that's fine. You can do science fiction and horror. There is horror imagery, but I gotta be honest, I was never scared. This movie is not really that scary. It tries to scare you, but it's not very effective at being scary. So that may explain why its box office has been way lower. It just didn't give the kind of good scares that at least Get Out and Us had. Even those, I think, had a lot of problems, but at least Us legitimately had a few good scares. And I was like, whoa, that was pretty good. Get Out, I still think is kind of weak, but compared to this, it is way better as a horror film. This one is kind of meandering and not going anywhere in particular, but he has a big subject. So, what is occurring? Well, basically, OJ and his sister Emerald. I still want to double check if her name is really Emerald. That just sounds so stupid. But basically, it's OJ and Emerald. They're this black family, sort of connected to Hollywood, but they're very low on the totem pole. They basically try to make money from animals and horses. And Jordan Peele has this big message about animal cruelty. And I guess it's a metaphor for black people, and the black horse is like black people. You might think I'm joking or like, what? But that's in the film. He seems to be very explicit about this. Yes, the black people are horses or something. Animals come up a lot. It's not just the horses, like monkeys come up. There's a lot of animals in this. You wonder, like, what the hell's happening? Well, I think basically the film discussed this recently with Kubrick Eyes Wide Shut. If you really understand Eyes Wide Shut, as well as David Lynch's Mulholland Drive, they're very clever films. One of the things they really key in on is Hollywood and how Hollywood has distorted and really ruined people's imaginations, and in particular about women and sex. Very clever films that are attacking Hollywood while recognizing it is a very powerful, potent place of imagination. So there's this kind of genre of Hollywood films making fun of Hollywood, and that's what Nope is. But it's nowhere near as brilliant as David Lynch or Stanley Kubrick, although, you guessed it, there are a lot of references to Kubrick, and even a few references to Lynch. There's also a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson. In fact, an entire section basically feels like Magnolia. So it's very derivative, and it's saying what those films said with Magnolia, Boogie Nights, Eyes Wide Shut is don't be fooled by Hollywood. It's not what it appears to be. It's a lot more damaging and destructive, and you're selling your soul. And at the end of the day, you don't make that much money. You didn't even become famous. So don't do it. So that's no. Basically, don't believe the hype. That's about it. So that's really the essentials of the film. So what is the plot about? Well, and this is already given away in the trailer. I'm not spoiling anything. There is an alien. The family spots the alien and they're like, hey, we could make a lot of money if we get photos of the alien. We could be like really famous and rich. OJ is kind of like the more sensible person, but he buys into this hustle. Emerald has this whole plan in her mind that they're going to get the money shot. And if you know pornography, yes, they're referencing hardcore, softcore pornography. Like, yeah, we need to get the money shot. It's pretty silly. It's not that strong. There are good performances. Some of the special effects were very well done with the creature and the various animals, but really, it's like, okay, who cares? Like, all right. Like, you thought it was going to be like about being abducted. Kind of it is, but the focus isn't really the alien. It's more like all these people want to exploit the alien. And I guess the alien is a metaphor for how we exploit one another and try to put it on YouTube and become famous or TikTok or whatever. And you're like, okay, the subject matter is fine. And there are a lot of great moments. There are a lot of like small scenes that are really well done by Jordan Peele and the way he moves the camera, the way things are directed, and a lot of great Easter eggs. There's tons and tons of films being referenced. I can't even begin. It's The Shining. Mentioned Paul Thomas Anderson. There's a, but at the end of the day, it's not very scary. It's not very profound. We've heard this before. We've seen this before. The setup itself is not even all that interesting. It's like, okay, there's this black family out in, I guess, the wilderness. This is near Los Angeles, I guess. And if you go outside of Los Angeles, I've never been to California, but it is, yeah, it's very like a desert country. So they're playing off of that, that once you get outside the city, it's like all very barren. And so you could basically get lost or killed. And there are moments which are so ridiculous or on the nose, like when Emerald yells to OJ, "Run, OJ, run!" They're referencing OJ Simpson in the 1990s and how OJ was in the Bronco. So if you're like an older horror and science fiction fan, you may get a lot out of this. I did. I recognized a lot of the allusions and references. I smiled. I thought they were very clever, well done. But that's about it. So there's a lot of cleverness, but the story itself is just pretty weak and stupid, and he's kind of getting repetitive because we've been here before. Like Us was about the same thing. It's how privileged people, white and black, oppress and exploit the people without privilege. And here we're doing the same thing, but now it's like an animal slash alien creature, and that's a metaphor for, I guess, American and global society, that we watch these videos where people are getting beaten or killed, or cats dancing on piano keys, and like we're basically turning into a bunch of mindless morons. Okay, yeah, we know that already. There are films that have done this way better in the 90s and even more currently. The film itself is not that good, but there's enough good moments I would recommend seeing it. Do you want to pay full price in the theater? I don't know. You're going to have to toss a coin on that one. I'm going to give this, I guess, a 7.5. It's good enough, but it does feel like he's regressing from Us. This is better than Get Out, which I thought was really silly and not strong enough. I think is very overrated, but at least that central story was very focused on. Here, he's kind of all over the place, and when he is drifting, it's still interesting, but after a while, you're like, okay, you've made your point. You could have just made this a very short, tight 80-minute film, but instead he's like just trying to preach to a choir, I guess. And it's like, all right. After the first 30 minutes, I'm like, okay, you did your preaching lesson. Is there anything else? It's like, nope, you're just going to keep preaching. And after a while, it's like, okay, this is getting very boring very quickly. And that's nope. Sounds like I'm being very harsh, but believe me, when you see it for yourself, you'll be like, wow, that was a whole lot of nothing going nowhere for no reason.